Hi everyone, welcome to the Z47 podcast. Today we're taking a fantastic topic to unravel for all of you guys. We are talking about founders and only founders. I think with a slight sort of more depth and color on the younger founders and the first-time founders. It's a topic very close to our hearts. I would like to say that it's something that we discuss and debate almost on a weekly basis, and I'm hoping this will be useful for all of you guys as well. Joining me is Avnish, the OG young founder, OG first-time founder who came and set up Bazi.com in India. Through the journey, we'll also hear about his own stories, several stories on founders that we've backed, that we've been lucky and privileged to be in partnership with. With that, I think we should start to cover first with the young founder, the archetype that I find most passionately excited about. So who is this founder archetype? We've heard Steve Jobs, the Mark Zuckerberg, all kinds of shows are getting popular. The WeWork show, the Uber show, all of those crazy eyeballs. We're enamored by this archetype, this young founder who will come and sort of create value, disrupt the world. We are lucky to be in a situation where it feels like the market is deepened enough to create several types of founders. So we're seeing there's a young founder, there's an experienced founder who's creating value by virtue of his experience, his market fit, etc. But if you were to sort of take a look back and start looking at these types of archetypes and where we are, India as a country, markets deepening, how are you sort of looking at this space overall and this archetype in particular?
Super. Thank you, CV. Very happy to be back on this. For a firm that calls itself founders first, like you rightly said, couldn't be a more exciting topic to talk about. I do want to start by just thanking founders. And this is not your classic check the box PC thanks. We are in business because of the first time founders. I know you called the young ones exciting. I think the older ones are never going to work with you, but that's your problem to solve. They can come to me. But we are in business because of them. So in Fund 2, we have 4 fund return companies. I think it's now known market information. We had Bhavesh with Ola. We had Pati with 5-star. He may not be that young, but he was a first-time founder, which is why I think more of it as first-time founders versus repeat or experienced founders. Then we had Ashish, or we have Ashish in Off Business. We have Harshil and Shashank of Razorpay. So we are in business because of them. That's what got us here. And the reality is, who doesn't love a disruptor, right? But again, I think age is not the right metric. It is actually first time versus not. Elon Musk is catching rockets back.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And he's a disruptor. So we all love disruptors. I will say that what has changed? What has changed is the market has expanded. Earlier, you didn't have scaled companies. So as a result, we started seeing more experienced founders also come out. So, there was an article the other day, Monday actually, in the Business Standard, which talked about 60% of the unicorns are first-time founders. 40% is experienced founders. I think it's going to be, it's an interesting thought to have longer term. And I'll tell you my thesis. So first of all, experienced founders, why have they suddenly come up? Because now you have experienced people. When I started, there was no digital internet companies. Today, you have many companies where people are getting trained under some of the best founders and then coming out. I think this is a beautiful mix, right? Now, I have a theory. My theory is, and sometimes part of it the experienced founders won't like, part of it the first-time founders won't like. So it balances out. I think the hit rate of experienced founders will be higher. I think a lot more by number, unicorns may get created by them because we'll talk about later, they're generally working in the same domain, so they have odds stacked a little bit in their favor. I think the market cap larger ones will get created by first-time founders because they're just fearless. Right?
Yeah.
So we'll see how it plays out. The twain shall exist together, and we are just excited and privileged to be in that situation.
No, it's very interesting you bring that up as well. And we will also link in our show notes the couple of podcasts that we've done on experienced founders, digital nation builders, industrialists, etc. On this piece, however, when you say this latter part, which is large market cap creation and disruption, So let's rewind a bit, go back in time, if you will, right? And let's go back to the time when you were raising. You were what, 28 when you raised for Bazi?
Yeah.
So you were in the US, cushy job, decided to come back to India, and I'm guessing knowing nothing about the country, decided you'll just plunge headlong and build something out. So take us through your journey. And then will also be great to, I mean, right now, and I've worked with Bhavish as well, he's such a personality now. But it'll be great if you can, for the founders that we backed when they were young, what did they look like when they started raising, and what was their worldview and what allowed them to make the impact that they have?
In terms of my background, very quickly, IIT, went to the US, did a master's in computer science. I was at Apple when Apple was going bankrupt. I had the privilege to actually presenting something to Steve Jobs. Very, very inspiring. This was before he cleaned up his act and became, black turtleneck. This was the tone shoes, tone t-shirt, shorts, feet up on the boardroom table. Really made me I was very intimidated and uncomfortable, but uniquely inspiring. And therefore, you can see some of the behaviors that you guys have a problem with. I didn't know, I think somewhere around that time, and we'll pick it up on whether entrepreneurs are born or made, I decided that I needed to be one. Went to Harvard Business School, was at Goldman Sachs. I was part of the team that took eBay public. And long story short, we had also been involved in Yahoo IPO, Amazon, all of these companies. And my one thing that hit me was Amazon was a bookstore on the internet, but you could still buy books offline. Yahoo was a news site on the internet, but you could still get news offline. eBay was a marketplace which you could not do offline. And it played to the core of the internet.
Yeah.
So I said, sounds like a very interesting idea. We actually, me and Suvir, who was my buddy from HBS, came back to India. And we'll talk about, having angel investors or VCs, but we were backed. First institution was Chris Capital. Before that was a gentleman called Scott Murphy as an angel. So came back, started Bazi, and then, realized that there were no internet users. Classic banker thing, 1.3 billion population or 1.1 at that time, had done no analysis on whether there was a market or not, and realized India was one of the few markets between 2000 and 2002 where the internet users actually declined year over year. Because in 2000, there were a bunch of these internet service providers that were using ad revenues as their business model. And therefore, you got maybe 3, 4, 5 million internet users at that time. They all went bust. So internet users went back down to 600,000. So it was crazy times. We survived and we sold to eBay. Now, coming back, people like, and I would say even when we started what was then Matrix, now Z47, first 4-5 years, the thesis was actually not digital. We have invested in hospital chains. We are lucky to be in Cloud9, Center for Sight. So we have a lot of offline businesses. W in the consumer brands, but we also managed to get into Quicker, Ace23, which was a great exit for us, gaming company, Daily Hunt. 2011-12, the market started turning. And I think, like I gave you 4 names before, Bhavish was the first one we met. All of these were in that 2012 to 14 time frame that we met. What did we see? I think each archetype is different. Bhavish was not, the aggression is well known, but the aggression not in the way it is known, in execution, right? So we would be having a meeting and he would just step up and say, I have to leave because I have this thought that I need to implement, right? So he would just go immediately. But I think layered on clarity of thought. The clarity of thought of this guy, I remember we didn't have an investment committee, but we have, investment team meetings. And he was in that, and one of the senior people asked him, so, you go on this Ola, no app, by the way. That time was all 99% phone bookings. But he said, in the future, so futuristic vision. And he didn't know, by the way, about Uber. People think this was copy-paste. No, both were started around the same time. Yeah. So he was forecasting the mobile penetration and location-based. None of these companies existed. Zomato, Swiggy, all of the things that work on location-based. And he said, 2 saal mein ye sab change ho jayega, right? And there was a mock-up of the app because the app existed, but there was no usage. And I remember my co-founder actually asking him, so book karo and point A to point B, app और क्या करती है? And he said, आपको और क्या चाहिए? Point A से point B नहीं जाना है क्या? So just the clarity of thought which has helped him always execute multiple different projects.
Where does the clarity of thought come from? Like the confidence, I can believe, is their own journey and how they've sort of their intrinsics in some form.
Yeah.
But the clarity of thought, is that coming from a deep desire to see the world differently? Do they continue with that clarity of thought throughout? Like, how does that break down?
I think they are first principles thinkers, right? And that is one thing that is common. And therefore, I keep saying as an investor, you have to ask why, not why not, because we have to pick a certain set of investments we're going to do. I think as an entrepreneur, you have to ask why not? Why can't I do this? So, and the extreme example, of course, Bhavish is an extreme example, right? So, when we were doing Ola, or when he was doing Ola Electric, there were so many things he would say, and I would say, but has this been done before?
Yeah.
And he would say, but why not? Well, this is not rocket science. Motor bhi khud banayenge. I mean, people don't realize what the mode of our Ola Electric is. We make our own batteries. Everything is first principles. Elon Musk, what is the biggest cost? Why is space travel so expensive? Why can't people go on Mars, which is his mission? Why is space so expensive?
Reusability of rockets is what he's figured out.
Yeah. So because the rockets blow up, don't let them blow up. Who thought of that? A rocket is landing itself and now it's catching, he's not even letting it, earlier it was being dropped into the ocean. So first principles thinking. And there I do think the first time founders and maybe even the younger founders have an edge a little bit. See, the experienced ones get first principles thinking basis such deep knowledge of the domain that they know where first principles are not being applied. I think the younger ones make it even more nativist, which is, I am just not colored and I have no baggage. So I'm going to do it. Zepto, the fact that quick commerce has blown up everywhere in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a negative thesis on it, which is why we missed it. But why not? The reality is, just on that, modern trade did not work in India because modern trade was less convenient compared to Kirana stores. But quick commerce is more convenient than Kirana stores. So it can actually leapfrog, right? So I do think first principles thinking is key. Ashish, also very aggressive. And we'll talk about aggression in a different, but see, you have to channel aggression correctly. Both these guys, the other common thing is they have never heard that they cannot do something. So that massive self-belief. And both working like literally sleep in the office. Razor, having done Bazi since we spoke about it, I had personally been the product manager for the payment gateway. It was called Paisa Pay. And I knew everything was broken. So CC Avenues was broken. Well, I hope Vishwas is not listening to this. All of the Bill Desk, CC Avenues, all of the payment gateways were broken. So we built our own. It was called Paisa Pay. It was modeled on PayPal. 10 years later, after selling Bazi, they were still broken. And then Shashank and Harshil were at YC. And when I asked them, because I had been PM of building that payment gateway, the level of research, they had gone into the banking stack because everybody else was floating here and hence their success rates of credit card. What do you think is the success rate of UPI today and credit cards today, and what do you think it was 10 years ago?
I think maybe 20-30% difference.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So exactly that. So now today it's 85 to 95% between UPI and credit card. In my time it used to be 50% for credit card. We took it up to 65. It was still 65 10 years later. And then Shashank and Harshil came and they said, everybody's operating here. We are going to operate here of the banking stack. I said, but are the banks willing to do it with you? They said, yes. And again, never heard no. So if they are not, so their background, by the way, is that they were hackers. And they could have, I hope I'm not overstating the case, but they could have even gone into trouble because of that, like Napster type of hackers and all that, right? So they went very deep. So one saw complete founder market fit. Tech is broken and these are world-class techies, right? And they were in YC and all that. In those days, there was no Zoom. This was a Skype meeting and we committed to invest on Skype. First ever investment like that. Shashank of Racto is very different profile, very missionary. He dropped out of NIT Suratkal, 2008, 2009. I don't know. He claims he's gotten a degree, but we never did the background check. And he wants to revolutionize. So disrupt is the wrong word. He wants to revolutionize healthcare. And, healthcare is a very tough system to change, but he's been at it. So I think those are the Dilshare you asked about, gaming, Zupi. He was a gamer since he was 14 or 15. He was coding stuff. So IIT Kanpur, computer science, 22, 23-year-old, if you have to back somebody to do something, it is somebody so I would say founder market fit there.
And is that rare then? Because we are also saying first-time founder, some of them potentially young. P0 question on are founders born or made? You've always talked about the journey. So where do you lie on the spectrum and what do you look for?
Where do you lie? You're also ex-founder.
I do believe that the journey does have something to add. So personally, while I always had a point of view on I should start a business at some point of time, the reason I finally took the plunge is, so there is a chip on the shoulder, but it was mostly seeing Bhavish in action and just being inspired by how we ran Ola. Foodpanda was acquired by Ola. So just being able to work with him closely and see that and just get inspired by that, I thought, this is a journey I'd like for myself as well. So it was a bit of a journey for me. If you'd asked me when I was 20, 22 years old to say, CB, do you want to start a company next year? I'd probably say no. I'd have to go through my journey for that.
Yeah.
So,
so I agree with that. And in psychology, there is this constant nature versus nurture debate. And I'm very clear that it's some version of both. But I'm very clear that certain intrinsics you are born with, which is nature. I see it with my children. They couldn't be more opposite. Their intrinsic psychometrics, which I've made them do, sadly, are opposite of each other. I think as it comes to entrepreneurship, I think it's more nurture. And I think it's 80-20, in my view. So my view is they're not born...
80-20 skewed to nurture?
Yes. I think it's an experiential journey. I think there is some level of restlessness, but you need confidence with that. Sometimes it's maverick, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's you want to change the world. Sometimes you want to make a quick buck. We didn't talk about my motivation. So let me actually just list. You may have a chip on the shoulder, out to prove something. You may be inspired by the success of somebody around you. Mine was a little bit of all of the above. Growing up middle class, in a family where my father was in central government, in a department where, and we have spoken about this, where there was corruption all around us. But he was absolute number one integrity, and what I picked up from him. So as a result, we had a Fiat car when others were getting new cars, and we were the last ones to get a television because everything had to be by the book. And that did create a desire for money in me, right? So there was that motivation also. So the dot-com bubble, there's that. But if I plot my career trajectory, it was basically restlessness to say, and it was a very simple goal. How do I make $2 million? In 2000, I had done some math that if I make $2 million and I do 10% yield every year, then I'm set for life. That was it. And so we can talk about fancy goals, but that was the goal for me. Why did it happen? All of this, all of the nurture piece and all of that. I think by the way, I was less inspired. I came and met, by the way, in 97, I was looking to start a IT outsourcing business. Came and met the founder of Mastech, Narayan Murthy, all these guys. And I said, very inspired by them, but don't see myself doing this kind of a services, visa management type of business. So I do think it's a little bit of all of the above. I do think people are made. The best ones, like my motivation was not the best. And then it becomes a problem. I came back in the dot-com bubble, and 2002 I was depressed. That there's no market. Did I screw up my career? I used to work at Goldman Sachs. I came back with $250,000 of debt. No, yeah, something like that. And I'm like, did I screw up my career? So the more deep-rooted, if your motivations are more long-term, inspirational, I want to, or change the world, missionary, then I think you can ride out the downturns. So I do think, to the extent founders are listening to this, think about your motivation. And I think that because it is very difficult. I think ultimately we got lucky that we got bought out, but it was a very tough journey.
First time founder, young founder, while it sounds very exciting, you also are starting a company with a bunch of weaknesses that you want to sort of somehow de-risk, hedge out, etc. Right? So maybe we start out with, what do you think are the weaknesses typically that this archetype has? Because we've seen on the experienced founder side that they actually make a lot fewer mistakes. They actually achieve PMF far earlier, etc. Right?
Yeah.
So what kind of mistakes does a first-time founder typically make, and how do you think they can sort of avoid it?
So, through this discussion, I think we are going to really screw our happiness, because we are going to talk about some of the things we think about, the playbooks, and the next founder we meet, if they have listened to all of this, will come like fully prepped. But like we tell our founders and our companies, it's not about the idea, but it's about the execution. So we'll share the idea here. Let's first go back to your earlier question. What are the common traits generally in success? Whether experience, whether first time, achievement orientation, drive. I do think to have the right way to do this is that what Bhavish calls the tapasya level of work. And reimagine your failure more than your success. Success is great reward. Imagine your failure and live that failure, visualize that failure and see, are you okay with it? I didn't do this. And most first-time founders wouldn't do this and shouldn't do this because, well, actually maybe should do this. But we are meeting Ankush after this of DSLR. He used to work with us. I mean, the story that I heard from you guys, it brought it back that when he was starting up again, he was a founder before, it didn't work. Then he worked with us. Then he went back and before he went back to start this business, he went and lived as a beggar in a temple. I mean, that's it. It couldn't become better articulation. And he said, can I live that life? And he said, I can live that life. Now, of course, the company is doing well. I think it's doing well because he visualized all of this, right? So I do think at a high level, that's important. We discussed clarity of thought, fearlessness, aggression, all of that. This all has to be channeled, right? To your actual question on what are the... So startups are sadly destined to fail.
Yeah.
Failure rate is, depending on which data you look at, I don't know, 70, 80, 90%. So I keep telling people odds are stacked against you. Your job as a founder is to figure out how to stack the odds in your favor, right? What happens naturally for experienced founders is they because of their experience, the ones who hit success very quickly. We have Nesa with Sharad, One Card with Anurag. So Sharad is doing AI cloud. He was the first private data center company in the country. Anurag is digital first credit card, head of ICICI Bank credit card business. So they know the domain. So let me ask you this. Why do companies fail?
I think we discussed this sometime back. This is around unknowns.
Life, if you put a 2x2 and you say knowns, unknowns ka 2x2, me, others. Known to me, known to everybody, market information. Known to me, unknown to others, my edge.
Yeah.
Known to others, unknown to me, my failure node. Unknown to both is, that's where the first principles thinking comes. I think what happens is sometimes, not often, the new founders, and which, by the way, I think cuts both ways, because it's also not a baggage, or sometimes experience can be a liability. They get surprised, negatively surprised by things that play out around them. And experienced founders think through those unknowns, right? I still remember we hadn't articulated that we think of things like this. So I still remember asking Anurag that, if, and there's a standard question we ask, if 1 to 2 years from now, we are sitting here and the business has not gone according to your plan, what could have gone wrong? And this guy went up on the board and he said, Avnish, here are the 6 unknowns in my business. So before he could even put the first one, I was done.
That's an experienced founder.
That's an
basically.
experienced founder.
Yeah.
That's an experienced founder. So the watch out for is, and I tell all the first time founders, think more. You and I talk about, we just spoke about thesis. I don't care about a positive thesis. What I care, because the founder will figure it out. We are in the two best AI infra, knock on wood, two best AI infra companies in the country, Krutrim and Nesa. If we had done a thesis, you and I were joking, if we had done a thesis on AI infra, we would have said, too capital intensive, let's stay out.
Yeah.
And we are in the two best because we followed the founders. It's our job to help complement the thinking is to say, what are the unknowns? Go look at the failures in the sector, not at the successes. And come up with those unknowns and let's see. And either the founder will know them, otherwise you can help them. That's where we can add value because we have a 360-degree view. So I think that's, to me, the most important. The other thing I'll say, and this is a beautiful sketch that I just did. If you can zoom in on this, I think Vineet will make a nicer version of this. So what this basically shows is probabilistic versus deterministic thinking. This is your starting point. This is your goal. First time founders, let me just make it bolder. And this is also the maverick that we love. We'll say it's a straight line hai. I'll go this way.
Yeah.
That's a deterministic thinking. Probabilistic thinking is, but these are all the other branches of the tree that can happen. And what is my thought process in those situations? And make the tree come back here. Or you may move slightly here or slightly there.
Yeah.
Where people end up in failure, this may be the failure zone, is you didn't think through this tree and you find yourself on that branch.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that's, if you ask me, it's more a thinking mindset. So you should, if you have probabilistic thinking, scenario planning, I think you have better odds for success.
So I think that's also a trap. See, when I'm talking to the younger founders or the first time founders, right?
Yeah.
Basically, there's, like you said, it cuts both ways. So what could be perceived by one as clarity of thought could simply be a deterministic route to failure for somebody else, right? And hence, this whole question of, is this a naive / immature view on the world versus is this clarity, first principle thinking, visionary, right? It's very tough to figure that out. And I'm a minted new VC in some form, so I'm figuring out my own patterns. But it's very difficult to figure out in that first sort of hour, right, of the interaction. Yeah. So how do you make some of these decisions to say, I don't understand the thesis, the market's only evolving, nobody understands the thesis.
Yeah.
Is this clarity of thought or is this not knowing enough?